Welcome. I am Deborah Gallant. I am the EforAll Berkshire County Executive Director, and I run these deep dive programs once a month on a topic that I think that the small businesses in our community should be engaged with and talking about. We've done them on getting certified as a minority or woman-owned business. We've done them on hiring your first employee. We've done negotiation skills. And this month, I literally could not be happier to be presenting this topic. We've actually changed the names about a dozen times, but I think it's called, What Does Equity Mean in My Small Business? I think that's what we decided to call it. And I have called in the cavalry to help me. So I'm going to set us up by just showing my screen for just a few moments to get us started, and then I'm going to hand it off to our panel. So view present, here we go. So here's one of the names we gave it. How do I make my business more equitable? We're going to be talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how do we make an impact even with our small businesses? And we are recording. This will be available on our website. I would be remiss if I did not thank the sponsors of EforAll Berkshire County, who are all listed here. They make it possible for us to offer these terrific free programs to you. I think most of you know about EforAll, and you'll be hearing more about it today, but EforAll partners with communities nationwide to help underrepresented individuals successfully grow and start and grow businesses. And these are the latest impact numbers, which I just think are phenomenal. We run pitch contests, we run accelerators in about 14 different communities, including where I am, is Berkshire County, Massachusetts. These deep dives are every month. The next one we're doing in August is how do I scale my business, which is going to be another panel discussion with EforAll alumni. And in September, networking for success. All of our programs are archived at eforall.org. So I'm going to introduce the facilitator and the panelists, and then you're going to hear less from me than you usually do in a deep dive because I have, as I said, superstar panelists today. Let me introduce them to you. I'm going to actually stop sharing so we can see each other's screens. Jeff Rogers is our facilitator. Jeff is sort of the guru of EforAll's diversity empire, all the efforts that we're making. Our staff person, Jeremiah, is also on today and brought Jeff in. Jeff is an executive leadership coach and facilitator who has been training, coaching, and facilitating for over 10 years in Greater Boston. He specializes in the solution-focused method, radical candor, I love that, and is working with low trust, high heterogeneity groups, people that aren't necessarily predisposed to agree. Aside from founding his own company, RogersLeads, he runs YW's Lead Boston program, Gen Unity's cohort, teaches nonprofit leadership and community engagement at the Harvard Extension School, and so much more. I'm going to stop there because I want to introduce the other two fabulous people. The other presenters are EforAll alumni, which I just love. That these guys, these gals, are going to be able to engage in this conversation with us from a very knowing place because they once sat where we all sit. Cleonie Mainvielle, do I say the last name right?
You did very good. That's correct.
Okay, is a productivity and time management coach who facilitates mastermind groups for busy female entrepreneurs and professionals who are seeking an instant network of like-minded women for brainstorming, non-judgmental support, and accountability. She's also the founder and co-president of DICE, which stands for Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Empowerment, a nonprofit organization designed to promote diversity, inclusion, cultural competency, anti-racism, empathy, and compassion in predominantly white towns and schools. And our final, I also want to just say, because Jeremiah made reference to this before, Cleonie has been quoted before as saying her EforAll experience was like a soft pillow to land on when she launched. And we love that, and we quote you all the time. Andreina Viera is an administrative professional and business aficionado committed to creating solutions for businesses and enabling growth in professional settings. With over 20 years experience in the executive world, she's worked in the offices of industry leaders in fashion, food, health, and education. In her most recent role as the CEO of the Vieras, she connects people, ideas, and professional development, helping businesses increase their margin while decreasing their liabilities. This is such a great panel. If any of you have come to our deep dives before, you know that I usually am the facilitator, but I'm really delighted because I feel like I'm in over my head here. I'm going to hand this off to Jeff Rogers. Jeff is going to facilitate us today, but let me just cue him up first, which is, I feel as the person who runs the deep dives at EforAll, that there's a lot of talk about DEI if you work in a big organization. You probably have been through a training or somebody gave you a manual or something to agree to, and you're aware of it. But I feel like in our small businesses and in the community that EforAll is, we are so busy doing our work that sometimes it's hard to take a deep breath and say, what should we be doing? How should we be approaching this topic? And that's how I came up with this today. Jeff is going to lead us. I have a couple of scenarios here that we're going to discuss with the panelists, but these are so much more interesting if you guys engage with us. So I encourage you, if you feel like it, to leave your camera on, to comment, to use the chat, to raise your hand. We're going to be here till about 5:30 or so. And I think I'm going to shut up now. So Jeff, it's on you.
It's on me. They're always the words that you want to hear. What's up, folks? I'm Jeff. I've been introed delightfully by Deborah. So thank you very much for having me. I can't wait to talk about this. The first thing I will say, though, is that I know that the way we're going to do this is going to be interactive. I also know what it's like to sign into a webinar and you say to yourself, I'm going to have this on while I do the dishes as if it was YouTube, but it is not. So in our fondest dreams, everybody's involved, everybody's talking, asking questions. That's how this will work best, right? So ideally, it's not a law, but ideally, folks would have their cameras on and they would unmute. Now, if you live at the jackhammer factory or your kids are learning the drums, I get why you wouldn't unmute, but otherwise, you would unmute, all right? So welcome. We're going to get started, but the first thing I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to share my screen and we're going to look at dialogue practices. I share these only because what's important about these is that this is how we have a constructive conversation about this, all right? And so the first thing is that when we talk today, everybody, me, the panelists, all the guests and audience today, we're going to use I statements. So for example, I don't speak for everybody with a beard. I don't know what bearded people think or feel. I only speak for me. I say, I, Jeff, don't use harsh products on my beard. Not, no one uses harsh products on their beard. We're going to use inquiry, not advocacy. That means that when someone expresses an opinion that you really, even if you really disagree, like, I don't know, the Yankees are way better than those bum Red Sox. Even if they express that opinion, your goal is to try to figure out, oh, what makes you think that, and inquire, not to advocate and change their mind and launch into a long diatribe about why David Ortiz is this or that. We're going to practice both and thinking and embrace paradox. The stuff we're talking about today, it's not like it's fully solved. It's not like it's calculus where we could bring in some MIT professor and he would just know the answer to every question right away. It's not like that. People are more complicated than that. We got to step up and step back. That means that, and this is a big one, if you're somebody who has a lot of ideas and anecdotes and you want to share them, that's what we're hoping for today. At the same time, make sure that you make room for others that might not be so forthright. And conversely, if you're somebody who joined on here today, but you told yourself, listen, I'm just in a listening phase and I'm just here to listen and I'm just gonna hear people out, but I don't really want to add anything. I disagree. The goal today is that everybody would take part and really be a part of this and kind of enrich our dialogue by contributing. And so I challenge you, even if you describe yourself as an introvert, even if you think of yourself as somebody who's new to these ideas and this talk, that's perfect. Please speak up, ask your questions, make your comments, share your opinion.
Jeff, as much as I know you want everyone to be unmuted, it does sound like someone's vacuuming in the background. So maybe if you're not speaking, you have to keep yourself muted. I don't know whose noise it was, but
they already captured it. It already
perfect.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right, but they're gonna have a clean house, so that's nice. It's nice to come home to a clean house. We're gonna lean into discomfort. right? So the fact is that these topics that we're discussing today they're a third rail in American life, right? Race, class, gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, all these things. They explicitly tell you like, oh, and how to, make friends and influence people or whatever. It's like, oh, don't discuss those topics. Today, we're going to talk about them. So for that reason, you got to lean in. That little alarm that you get where you go, oh, we're treading in uncharted ground. Well, uncharted ground is where the learning is. So today we're going to talk about that stuff and you got to lean in. As a listener, we're going to assume best intent. And that means that when somebody says something, we're not trying to necessarily catch them for not using the exact perfect word or phrase, because we're learning in here and people are at different stages in their journey. So we're trying our best to assume that everyone here is trying to do a good thing. Everyone's here just because they want to learn and do better in life and make things more equitable. And so for that reason, we got to basically give grace. And lastly, if we do all this, we'll have a safe space where people feel comfortable enough to share and really be vulnerable, and a brave space where people are pushing themselves to really share and grow in a way that, frankly, if we don't do the work, won't happen. So that's why we're doing this. So with all that said, before I go to the panel, I have one more question that I think is essential to this. Hold on, let me stop sharing screen. Which is, before we go to the panel, this is for everybody. Who's brave enough to say what they think is the difference between equality and equity? Because this is called how to increase equity. And yet I wonder if we can really define what equity is as opposed to equality. Can anyone say even what they think that might mean? Or do people think that they're synonyms and they just mean the exact same thing? Like fall and autumn. Do those mean the same things? To me, they do.
I can jump in.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ashley. When I think of equity, I think of creating tools for like to get people to the same level, but realizing everyone has different starting points. So like there's images of like, giving someone a stool, but someone might need a ladder and someone might need just like a little rock to step on to get to an equal footing. So that's what I generally think of.
So the idea is to give people the tools to succeed rather than to say everyone gets the same thing at the beginning. Is that right? Right.
Yeah.
Is that kind of the feeling folks had? Like when you heard, even though, there's a lot of things you can't define, but you kind of know what it means. Is that like the feeling people had? Because that's generally, Ashley referenced, sometimes they'll show an image and it'll be a fence. People are watching a ball game and there's a fence. And then one person's really tall, one person's kind of short, one person's in a wheelchair. And so the tall person could just see over the fence. They don't even need a stool. The shorter person needs a stool or a box to see over the fence. And then a stool doesn't help a person in a wheelchair at all. So equality is to give everybody the stool. Wheelchair, you get a stool. Tall guy, you get a stool. And then equity would be to say, okay, the fact is everyone deserves to be able to see over this fence. So wheelchair, you get a ramp. Tall guy, you might not get a stool. You don't need one. You can see over it fine. And short person, whatever you need, if you need 2 boxes or whatever it is, that's what you get. That's kind of the idea. So today, again and again, we're gonna talk about how to increase equity at the workplace, in our small business, in our workplace. And we're gonna be talking about this. And we always have to keep in mind the distinction between equity and equality, because equality is kind of easy in the sense, there's a phrase I like, which goes, our society is very equal, and that neither rich people nor poor people are allowed to sleep under bridges. That is equal, all right. Right? Neither rich people nor poor people are allowed to steal bread. Yeah, that's equal. But it's, it's not necessarily equitable. Right? Does that make sense? Word. Thank you, Ashley, for describing that. And so now we're going to go to our panel. So and I want to make sure I'm getting it right. I heard Cleonie and Andreina. Is that right? All right, very good.
Correct.
So my question is, you guys are here as the panel. You have your own, you're both through, you already went through EforAll, right? And so the question is, what have been some of the challenges at your small businesses to try to increase equity? Is it easy? You just wake fully equitable on the first day because you're a good person?
I'll start off. I had to learn the hard way from making some mistakes. My business is 100% virtual, and I was very fortunate to get a contract with a business in Kenya. And at that point, I realized that I was really focused on, the United States, the zip code, and our technology and how we communicated in between our meetings. And so really focusing on, one, admitting that I was unprepared for this kind of global reach for my business, two, course correcting publicly, making that known, and getting the feedback from my new clients. And then also creating space.
What was the mistake?
Go ahead.
I'm not sure I'm understanding it. What was your mistake?
Well, one, when we changed our time zone in the United States, I did not properly announce that to the clients in Kenya. And so when it was time for our first meeting after we changed to daylight savings time, all of Kenya was missing. I'm like, what happened here? So those small things, right? You just kind of focus on what's happening here in the United States, not necessarily on the cultural side, but just the logistics and the technology. Here, we rely a lot on Slack. There, they rely a lot on WhatsApp. And that was another problem that we had. Technology isn't always consistent there, losing power or just connectivity. And so those kinds of things were the area. I accepted the contract without really evaluating and updating some of the way I communicated with my clients.
And can I ask, is that because you don't care about Kenyans and their problems are their problems, and if they can't do it, tough luck?
No, just definitely not. It was just lack of awareness. When you're a solopreneur and you're doing it all, the first thing that I did was to try to automate things, right? I got my templates, I have all these things, but the templates weren't inclusive because it did not account for the time zone shifts and all of those things. And so in making my life easier so that I can scale, I excluded some of my clients and at the uptake. I quickly adjusted, but it's those kinds of things. When you're focusing as a solopreneur and you're looking internally about, as to how you're running your business, I did not create enough space to think about the tools that would make life easier for me, how that would impact my clients overseas.
Right. So you found out that you had some blind spots that weren't obvious until you started dealing with these people who come from a different place.
Correct.
That makes a lot of sense. Andreina, what about you? Anything like that or different?
Well, something similar, but I have a different story. When I started my business, so I am Latina, I am a woman, I live in a disadvantaged community. And so when I started my business, I only wanted to hire Latinas in disadvantaged communities that were moms. And so in my head, I'm like, great, I'm doing amazing with my DEI bucket list, right? I'm checking everything off. And as I'm working with my Latina woman moms from Lawrence, Lowell, Haverhill, I started realizing that I'm leaving out a whole bunch of other folks. So I wanted to have DEI so badly, I was doing the total opposite because there wasn't much diversity. I thought that if you're a Latina, you're diversity. No, diversity means including other folks from other parts of, the world, society, gender. So I wasn't doing that. Then I thought, well, I'm being fair. It's definitely equity here because I'm giving stay-at-home moms another chance. That's great. I was being mission driven. And then I'm including everyone that usually is excluded. And what I took was my experience working in corporate world, and I made my own bubble with my own gang. And that wasn't, I had good intentions, but it wasn't the right approach. And so even though I'm still mission driven, I now have a team of Indians. I have a team of Blacks. I have a team of males. I have a team of a lot of different other people. The guys are included. And it gave a different perspective to have just the white, the Black, the Indian, the Hispanic, everyone, because whatever we are, pretty much our background, our experiences, what we go through, it's helped the business push forward. Whereas not just the stay-at-home moms club, no, it's the everyone club. Join our club. I opened the club to become bigger. And I do have employees that work in India. I have employees that work in Canada. I have employees that work in New York, Miami, LA. Like I am in all sorts of zones. So I really can resonate with what Cleonie had said in regards to being inclusive, as to if I'm having a team meeting, I'm not gonna have it at 5 p.m. because my folks in India are not gonna be able to attend. I need to have it at 10 a.m. and it needs to be the most live party at 10 a.m. for everyone, because that's the fair, equitable thing for me to do.
Wow, that's really quite a journey, because at one point, you know, you knew you basically changed an axiom, right? Because you knew that Latina women, single moms, needed help, and you knew that they were being left behind, right? Or or not included in the same way. So then you started a thing, and you realize, oh my God, I've become what I sought to destroy, because now in my goal to gather these folks, I've excluded everyone but these folks. Quite a journey indeed. If you ever hear, has anyone ever heard this? Someone says, yeah, we interviewed somebody yesterday. He was a diverse candidate. You ever heard that? Someone referred to, how can one person be diverse? Right? It's a funny thing, but it's because diversity in some ways has become a euphemism for minority, or in the United States for black and brown.
Jeff,
Say,
can
well,
I go to one of my scenarios? Because I think it's really relevant right now. If you're running a small business and you're a white person, and you look around yourself and you realize your employees, your vendors, your customers, they all look like you. Maybe they're all white women, maybe they're all white men, whatever. But things are working okay. Is it incumbent on you to think more broadly? Like if I had a Black woman lawyer, maybe I would get a different perspective, or I should change accountants, or do I need to do outreach for different kinds of customers? If it's working, it's not broken, as a small business owner, it feels like, should I be doing something here, or is it okay to stay where I am?
Yeah, that's a good question. What do folks think? You're gonna let go of your accountant? You say, listen, I just have too many white women, so one of you has to go, and it's you.
Come on, y'all. This is an interactive session.
Someone must have an opinion.
Jonathan has his hand up.
Oh, I couldn't see that. Sorry, Jonathan. What do you think?
I don't believe in picking a person to do the job for their color or their race.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in the best person for the job should get the job, regardless of ethnic background. Me being Hispanic, I would like to see more Hispanics within the community get the jobs needed. And I do think there's certain times that they're overlooked just because of their ethnicity. But I'm a firm believer everybody should get an equal chance, but the best person for the job that can help you succeed should be in the position to receive that job.
Thank you, Jonathan, for putting that out there. So Jonathan's talking about meritocracy, right? Everything should be merit-based, so the best person. And yet, and that's already, isn't that like, now when I say this is an espoused value, not a lived value. So by that, I mean, the United States out loud is very strong on meritocracy. That's a stated value that we have. Like we have a stated value of, let's say, freedom of speech, right? Meritocracy is another one. So is there any pitfalls to that? Michelle, did you have a comment?
Yeah, so we've gone through thinking about it, and I don't know that we have the right answers all the time, but best candidate based on what? Best candidate based on the people that are doing the hiring, that have the experiences that they have, that have the knowledge that they have, that haven't opened themselves up to different ways of thinking, may prevent you from getting where you need to get to. So different people do different jobs different ways, but isn't that the point of what we're trying to get to is broader ideas overall? So I do, Deb, I do think it's a problem, and I struggled with it for a lot of years, doing the hiring with the same kind of question. If it's working, what do we do? And if the candidates aren't coming to us, if the pool's not diversified, all those questions that keep replaying themselves just continues to feed a problem. It's incumbent upon us to find people that have different thought patterns and different lived experiences. They'll do the job, they'll just do it different. And I think, like, I don't know if this is where you're going or not, Jeff, but I think we need to think in terms of what the qualifications for a job are. Is it really a degree, or is it lived experiences? By putting some of the qualifications out there, like a degree, have we already excluded a whole population of people because they didn't have the same opportunity? But if we spend 5 minutes talking to them, we're going to learn they know a heck of a lot more about whatever the topic is than
Michelle, I would agree with you with hiring, but I'm putting, let's say Cleonie, who has her own business, right? So she's a solo entrepreneur, but she has vendors. She has an accountant. She has an attorney. She has somebody she buys her office supplies from, but they're all in place and they work fine. Should she deliberately say, everyone looks too much like me, I need more variety? Or do you, Jonathan's saying, if you're happy with the job those people are doing, why would you get rid of them?
Well, I see Jueri has her hand up. What were you going to say, madam?
Yeah, just really quick. And I love the comment that was made by the panelists regarding WhatsApp, because so I'm very familiar with WhatsApp. I'm also ethnically East African, but I grew up around the world, and I realized ever since I moved to the US, WhatsApp wasn't so prone and common to many folks. But anyone that's traveled internationally, WhatsApp is like the by default communication tool. So in terms of just kind of comprehension, that's just very interesting. But what I wanted to mention was in terms of recruitment, and even kind of looking back to say, okay, well, if my company is running and operating well, why should I consider changing, et cetera? In my former world, I did a ton of work around machine learning algorithm and artificial intelligence. And one thing that I was always paying attention to is, can algorithms actually be racist or sexist? And there's a whole debate. We're not going to get into it. But of course, a computer can make a decision faster, but that doesn't necessarily make it fair, right? And so depending on how we even build these systems, it can be biased, how they're developed, how they're ultimately then used. And it's just commonly known as an algorithm bias. So if the reflection is, well, we want successful candidates, let's say this meritocratic process, candidates, and if we're already successful, assuming that maybe I'm a middle-aged white man, I would then look to see folks that have similar experiences to me. And that by default would, of course, eliminate others. So I think anytime we look at ourselves as just the base exception, we normalize that we are a good example or threshold for what others should be, we're already falling short on really being susceptible to, of course, eliminating folks and not being diverse leaders. And anytime you have diversity in terms of gender, race, background, et cetera, that's really when you thrive. I think any other time, in my opinion, I think you're really not going to be successful in the very long future.
Right. And so, Katie, I see you have your hand up. Let me just say real quick, Jueri. So I appreciate you sharing that, and how it how it both relates is if I were to work at a place, right? I'll give you an example. I worked with I consulted a higher ed organization, staff of maybe 50. It's in the greater Boston area. And they didn't have a single Black person on the staff of 50. Now, do I immediately jump to, you must be secretly run by the Ku Klux Klan? I do not. That's not what I jump right to. But much like Jueri described these algorithms where they have certain input and therefore they generate a biased output. What I wonder, in greater Boston area, 50% Black and brown people. This place is in greater Boston. You have 0 Black or brown people. What are the chances that happened by chance? Like you flipped the coin and it landed on the head 50 times in a row. What are the chances that that's a fair coin? Or could there be something wrong in your hiring algorithm that perhaps generates this outcome? And then maybe should you look, and then at that point, should you maybe look to it, even though, because I know if I asked them, they would say something like, we just try to hire the best person for the job. And they mean it. Not that they secretly tank everyone whose skin is darker than a certain shade. I know they meant that. And yet, your coin comes up heads every time. So maybe we should look into ways that you can change your system. And you might even have to use some kind of brute force techniques because you're pretty far down this road. Just something to think about. Katie, what do you say?
Going back to Deb's scenario, I think my answer there is, I'm not currently a small business owner, but when I had a private practice, I do consider that my dollars are a form of power that I exercise in the world. And that, giving my dollars to the places where I feel like they will be in service of greater equity matters to me ethically, so I don't feel there's certainly no legal obligation to diversify your vendors as a small business owner. I don't even necessarily think there's like a moral obligation, but it just feels like, sorry, my dog does not agree. Says, yes, there is.
We love dogs and children. We love dogs and children.
But anyway, I'll mute myself so that she doesn't keep disturbing us. But I try to buy from small business instead of Amazon. I try to buy from minority-owned business instead of white-owned business when that option is available to me, because it feels to me like a way that my dollars can start to serve the greater equity in the world. So.
Right.
Thanks, Katie.
Right. Kind of voting with your wallet. Right. And that's the idea. And there's what's legal, there's what's moral, and what's best. Right. So it's not, it's legal to wear a Hitler uniform in the United States. That's a legal thing that you can do, but I wouldn't say it's moral or best. And maybe it's moral to feed, feed a starving, or to give from your restaurant to like give people food for free or whatever it is, but it might not be legal. There's some ways in which that can be illegal, right? And then what's best, if you see someone homeless and you give the money, maybe it's not immoral to walk past them. Maybe it's certainly not illegal, but some people would argue, but it's best to do something, right? Even though you have no obligation. So these are the various criteria on which we determine kind of what we do. Avinash, did I get your name right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
right.
What do you
Thank
say?
you so much, Jeff. I have a small business, a startup, a food business. I've been doing that for the last 2 years, a specialty dessert, and I've been working through some of the farmers market, and it's a great experience with EforAll. I just heard most of the comments, and I believe those were in regards to employment or having some diversity as far as the vendors and all. One of my experiences during these last 2 years, my ethnicity is I'm from India, and lots of time when you deal in different towns, even though we offer lots of free sampling and all, but people hesitate to go for it. And totally understandable because of the cultural difference and all. But for the last 2 years, I've been working on how to convince, how to get through and break that barrier. It's not easy, but quite a great experience in communicating and getting through. I got lots of help from different people, but I guess that could be one of the reasons as a owner to seclude themselves from the diversity, as far as, means I'm just guessing.
Avinash, is the treat that you're offering an ethnic food?
It is based on our family recipe. I consider it a purely American, because I tried to replicate that in India and I could not do that. It's purely an American thing.
Right.
Lots of people had advised me just to approach the Indian market. I didn't want to. I wanted to have the mainstream market try it, and if I cannot succeed, I will quit. But so far I am here, and I think I will be moving into the next step. But like, that's quite a unique experience, breaking that barrier. I thought I would just share my kind of experience with you guys.
Well, this is why I hate being on Zoom, because in person, I would hope that you would have brought some. And now
I would love to share. I would love to share.
And I would love a free sample. So we all
Absolutely. Yes.
All right, Jonathan, thank you for sharing that, Avinash. Jonathan, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah. To piggyback off of what Avinash says, my family and I, we just relocated from New York City. So I'm in the beginning phases of my startup, and I held my first event, but I noticed when I approach certain ethnic backgrounds, and I'm not dressed accordingly, say at the gym, because I make cold press juice, and I have tattoos, so, and I love fitness, and it's something I incorporate in my life. But I realized when I approach people, given just off of like how they look at me, and when they see my tattoos and they see my build, the first thing they think is a criminal, and it could be anybody, no race in particular, and it's kind of offensive at first until I approach them with a warm smile and tell them what I'm about and what I'm trying to do, and I see them feel more open up a little more to and give me a couple of minutes to listen to. And then again, some people I see, once they paint that picture in their mind off of my physical appearance, that is just like a closed door, and like regardless of what I'm telling them is like going in one ear and out the other.
Right. So you're talking about what you and Avinash both talk about is the challenges of kind of cross-cultural communication, that it's easy to say it in here, but then you go to do it, and who wants to get that negative feeling of somebody looking at you like, I don't know, you're like in a gang from a movie or something like that, where like, I'm here to do a good thing. I'm a good person. And so it kind of makes you want to say, well, I'm going to give bunnies here, stay to my own kind. Right. And you could imagine every group having that feeling because there's an awkwardness. Andreina, I see you got your hand up. And then also I had another question for the panel.
I just wanted to just reiterate what Jonathan had said. Right before this meeting, I had a meeting with the Fortune 500 CEO. And I was the only female, I was the only Latina, and I'm pretty sure I was the youngest one there. When I went into the meeting, I was so nervous, and I was just like, they're gonna look at me like I'm dumb, like I don't know what I'm talking about. How do I have the experience I have when I live in Lawrence? Like, there's so many negative things that went through my mind for about 20 seconds. And then I was like, hold up, girl. You are here, you own it. That's all you deserve it. And you fought your way to be where you're at. And towards the end, I took over the show, and I sold, and I have a new contract, and I pretty much managed the entire meeting. And I feel like a badass right now.
You go, girlfriend.
But like I have a tattoo on my wrist, and which I am erasing, by the way, because I got it when I was very young and I don't want it anymore. But I am that girl that does have a tattoo in her wrist. And I am also that girl, that woman that can go into a Fortune 500 meeting, represent Lawrence, represent women, represent minorities, represent myself, my town, my culture, and walk out of there successfully. So you may have those thoughts in your head. Those are normal. Even, everyone has those thoughts initially. It's how long you allow them to linger and to take control of you.
Right. Yeah, well, that is right. Some of that, we all, or most people can't help but mind read, right? You look at somebody and you can't help but imagine what they're thinking about us, right? You think about getting ready for prom, and when you walk in, you think everyone's judging your dress or your suit. Meanwhile, everyone there is thinking about their own dress or their own suit. And yet, at the same time, people do have preconceived notions. It's unlikely that Jonathan's imagined that no one has ever looked at him. And, there's certain stereotypes about being a Latin man in this world, in the United States. And you can sometimes feel people fitting you up for those stereotypes, so it's a tough balance to kind of punch through that. But my question, so remember, we're here talking today about what we can do to increase equity at our small business. So Cleonie and Andreina, you both mentioned basically the journey that you went on, where you both had something in common, which is you started off with a blind spot that you slowly realized, oh, I'm looking at this wrong. And we, really that's a months or years long process, even though you told it in 30 seconds. So my question is, can you guys think of anywhere where folks should look in their own business? Like where are the opportunities to kind of like audit? Like an easy one, Katie mentioned vendors, right? That you could diversify your vendors. You could diversify your employees, but if you're I don't know if this word is trademarked, solopreneur, is that right? Did I say that right? So if you're a solopreneur, maybe you don't have staff yet. So where should you look? Where should you look in order to, where are the chances to increase equity? Where are those chances found?
I guess I'll go first. I would say that I would agree with the vendors, the employees, but I think also clients. I do have a couple of Fortune 500 clients, but the ones that I truly am in love with are my nonprofits and my small for-profits, the corner mom and pops that need me the most. The ones that didn't know they needed me, and once they had our services, we made a true impact to not only them, their families, but also the community.
Because what you do is valuable. So even if they think they don't have the budget or don't have the need, it's like, yeah, anyone ever got a product like that? You didn't know you needed it. Now you can't imagine living without it.
And I'm always, I live in a constant battle, because that's where like my heart lies. I spend a lot of time with those clients. And as a CEO, people say, do the higher level stuff. Don't build bottlenecks around your clients' processes and whatnot. But I can't help it. I can't help going to the bodega and literally helping them with their filing, because they have receipts that are just out of this world. And it's something that, as an entrepreneur that's growing the business and that's trying to delegate more of the things, I have that constant battle with myself as to, okay, I need to be profitable. Right now, these are billable hours that I am not billing, but I also want to help. And I know that there's a trust issue, and I can't just send anyone over. They need to see my face. So that's a constant battle between delegating and growing, and also helping and maintaining.
Right. And what I'm hearing is that there's a small business that you may have just learned about called RogersLeads. And if you think I don't need help with filing, I do. So you come and help file. Avinash is going to provide the food, because my God.
And Jonathan has the juice.
Thank you. And Jonathan brings the juice. Did Cleonie make it back? I know.
Yeah, I think she did. Yeah.
I am here. Thank you for the grace, everybody. I had audio but lost on video. So for me, really looking at network, right, your networks, and seeing how diverse that space is, that's where I have been looking at for my business. When I first started, so I've been in predominantly white spaces since 18 years old. I worked in an office as the only Black person for 17 years. And the last time I worked with another Black person was in 1987. So when I started the more degrees I got and the higher I moved in my career, the wider and wider the space got. And so when looking to launch my business, I just needed the security of people that looked like me, because it was such a scary place for me to venture out. And so for the first year of my business, first 2 years of my business, my network was predominantly Black women. I just needed to be in that space where I saw people that looked like me with the backgrounds that I have doing this brave thing of leaving the security of a full-time employment and then launching into their business. As time went on, I realized that I needed to diversify my networking spaces, right? And as I gain more confidence in who I am and showing up into these spaces where you do have these thoughts about, I was going to do, my first original business was around organizing spaces. And I remember going into a networking event and thinking, who's going to hire a Black woman to come into their home and organize? So you have all that self-doubt. So really balancing both spaces and diversifying my network was really important. And I realized that the more confident I got in my skills and what I had to offer other people, I did diversify that space and, started to go out into more diverse networking. So it really, I think it's a journey, just like what Deborah mentioned, where there is this internal work that you have to do when you're looking at diversity and equity, and then there is that external work that you do, and always balancing both sides. As I heard the other attendees talk too about the original question, it's also about defining what success means. I look forward for a time where the dominant culture or predominantly white spaces feel that they're missing something versus us convincing them that we have something to offer. Because I've straddled both worlds, predominantly Black spaces, predominantly white spaces, I find that without that diversity, each group really are missing this like three-dimensional experience. And until we realize that without true diversity and inclusion, that you're missing something, then it is going to be hard to have these kind of cross-cultural influences, right? Thinking that your business is good enough because you have vendors that are predominantly white or employees, but is that what you really want, right? How do you truly define success, and really looking to diversify, whether it be your employees, vendors, or your network. But there is something missing without the diversity in perspective. Yeah.
I love what you're saying, Cleonie. And as the executive director of an EforAll program, one of the strongest things I've seen, and I know we have some other alums here, is that the conversations that go on in a cohort, because you're not all the same, I think open lots of people's eyes. Because when you do your customer survey, I think the starting point is there are lots of people like me who want to buy X, Y, or Z. And when you realize that it's not just about you, but it's about lots of different people with different perspectives and different buying power and different priorities, and seeing the fertile ground that gets sown when there's a conversation across it, and it's not just someone telling you something, but like, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And bringing those perspectives in, I think, is one of the critical elements of our EforAll experience, and I hope gets brought into people's small businesses after they launch too.
Yeah, exactly. Jonathan, I want to hear from you, and I also want people to think about, other than what we've mentioned here, where are the opportunities? Because we're going to crowdsource this. Where are the opportunities to increase equity in a small business? What are all the places I should look? Right, just like, you know what I mean? Like, rather than just say, well, vendors and staff, what else? Jonathan, what do you say?
I was just going to ask the question as far as bringing equality and equity towards your customer. You know, some people are in a position where I want everybody to be able to purchase my product, because not only do I want to sell juice, I want to bring health awareness and health education to people and to learn to make the right choices. And sometimes if my juice costs $8, that $8 could go towards someone's light bill, and it's a difference between being healthy or keeping the lights on. And how could I target people, you know, that they don't have $8 cash, but I know that from the research I've been doing, a lot of these cold press companies and don't accept supplemental like SNAP benefits. And I want to target that because I want to find that niche, and you know, I want everybody to be able to create that healthy choice. Either it be you could afford it with cash or any government, you know, funding that you have that you could use for food. I don't know if it's legal or not, because I am still in the beginning of building it, but I want to bring equity and equality towards my customers. We had I'm in the accelerator program, and one of it was defining your customers and breaking them down into 9 segments and giving them a name, what they do for a living. And I found it kind of biased, because if we're talking about cash, then my certain customer will have to be a certain job, making a certain amount of money to be able to afford my juice. So that's why it rubbed me the wrong way, because I want to bring awareness and education to everybody, and I want to make my product available for everyone. And so that was something I was writing down and thinking about, like how I go about going that route.
Right. Well, right, exactly. Just to put it in a nutshell, how do I provide something that's healthy and high end, that's not something that only wealthy people can afford? Right. I want it to be high end. Right. I'm not competing with Arizona iced tea, which is like poison in a can, although Jeff is drinking many. It's just poison, but I'm not competing with that. You know, it's been 99 cents for 20 years.
My wife was a regional manager before we came over here for Arizona Beverage Company in Brooklyn too.
And it's literally lighter fluid in there. But
it seems to me that, Jonathan, what you're talking about is probably having to go to the people who run SNAP and finding out what they cover. And my guess is you're probably right, that it's not one of the basic necessities of life. And maybe that's a lobbying thing, or finding a government official who can help you.
Certainly, that seems like the SNAP people would know, certainly. Right. But let's assume that we can't change the whole government. Let's use Jonathan if you don't mind, if we can use your business. So Jonathan has a high-end kind of like healthy fruit juice business. Is that right, Jonathan?
Yeah, we incorporate vegetables, locally sourced fruits and vegetables from local farms as much as we can in our product.
All right, there we go. So with just knowing that, but we know that the juice, it might cost, I feel like I heard you say $8. Is that right?
Yeah. So I have right now 8 my 16-ounce bottles will go for $8, but I'm also playing around with popsicles, and I don't know if I'm going to call them, you can freeze them, or I'm calling it double shot cold presses, and I'm marketing that at $2 to make it more feasible and affordable, and so people to still get a serving size of it, a full serving of fruits and vegetables at a price they could afford.
Very good. I mean, to some degree, it's not, I mean, we're not necessarily going to, you're working on this multiple angles, but the idea is you're competing against, a 3 liter of a 3 liter of no name brand soda is $2, right? And so we can have 3 liters of that, or whatever, whatever you just said, shot of it for more money. But what are some other, rather than just lowering the, like, where's the equity? Like, where is the opportunities for equity in this, other than somehow selling it at a loss, which is not very equitable to Jonathan, selling it at a steep loss. What, like, where else? So you looked at Snap, you looked at basically getting smaller size, so the price point is different, right?
Could you do a Tom's Shoes model where one person pays full price and that gives a free one away? So, the rich white lady who's walking through the farmer's market pays $10 for hers, but hers also buys a junior size one for somebody else. I don't know.
Yeah, that jumped into my mind, Deborah. Or you ever see those pizza shops that let you can buy a slice of pizza, but you can also buy like a ticket and put it on the wall, and then someone else can just come and get the ticket and get a free slice of pizza?
Yeah, I've seen that before.
What else leaps? We're just trying. We're just spitballing here. This is why not use this to actually increase equity in the actual world? What leaps out at people? You said the stuff is locally sourced, right? Your items are locally sourced, right? So it's not like you're buying them from Chemco. Like, oh, these, this grapefruit is from the chemical corporation.
Well, I think something that Andreina had said about some of her clients didn't know that they needed her until they had her company in service. And I feel like so much of a part of the equity discussion is education of, right? There's a lot of, well, even talking about health drinks, like a group that has been educated, right? That this is good for you and that there's a desire to want to help support someone local. But that we can't assume that's the value of everyone, that everyone understands that or knows that. And so I think there's a part of it that just has to do with informing people, right? And finding something that the community that you're wanting to target, that they value, and connecting that to, your product or what you're offering, to be able to even start that discussion.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, because I mean, there's a lot of people that think I'm constantly like, my kid is like, what, cranberry juice cocktail, it's good for you, right? And it's like, 50 grams of sugar per serving and all, but they go like, no, look, like there's like ocean spray, like it's healthy, or Gatorade. Almost every, like, young people almost universally think Gatorade is like drinking vitamins, right? And they had no idea that it's like salty Kool-Aid. They just have no awareness of that. And so maybe something that you do, rather than getting people the juice, it's a portion of this juice proceeds or whatever it is goes to that.
I also think that when you start a business, business change all the time. In the morning, I think my business is going to go one way, and by the end of the day, it's like totally different than what I imagined. That can happen with a day, a week, an hour, 30 minutes. And so I think that it's important for you to become equitable, for you to become, I think that the first phase of your company should be you making that revenue and you making sure that you're taking care of yourself and your team first. Perhaps that is selling to the rich white female at a farmer's market for now. And then knowing that in 6 months, once you're able to be sustainable, then you think about giving back and helping. Because in my experience, I try to help from day one, and I was broke for a long time for trying to help others. I think that it's important that you build a business model that is sustainable for you, your family, your employees. And then now I'm in a position where I could give back. And I give back by donating. I give back by having a nonprofit. I give back in many ways where if I wasn't successful in my business model, I wouldn't have been able to give back. My initial business model was to give back, but we are a for-profit and I need to make the money in order to give back. So I think that that's also, it seems like mean for me to say, but I learned the hard way. I shed a lot of tears trying to help others. And once I started helping myself and helping the company, then I grew and I blossomed to something bigger and better. And now I'm able to give back in a more sustainable way.
That's great. You said that a friend of mine that owns a business out in New York, he told me about the same thing. He said, you can't help nobody unless you help yourself first. And you have to remember you're going in this to turn a profit. And if you're going to use your beginning money to help anybody, you're just going to do yourself more harm than good. So like right now in the beginning, I'm trying to create some kind of brand awareness and make people aware of me. And a lot of people are more aware of the brand than what I thought. And, you know, that's just sometimes my thinking goes. And so like right now, what I want to do, I want to volunteer my time, to my like little free time, because I'm new to the area and I'm, you know, I feel this is home now and this is my children's home. And I was just, you know, just reaching out to people, any local events, any community work that I can do, that I could show that we care about others, you know, and at the same time promoting my brand and making people aware of it is great. And that's what I'm actually in the process of doing now.
All right, thank you. So I got a question that it's been kind of poked at and danced around, but I think we got to be very explicit about this as we think about this. Why is this even important? Like, you know, it's all well and good. This, you know, like even you say, well, help yourself now, and then when you're good off, help other people later. But why make my business more equitable at all? Like, why is diversity, equity, inclusion, like, basically, is there a pragmatic argument for it, or is it just what nice people do? What if I don't care about being nice?
I personally,
I want to talk because I set up this webinar. Here's the thing. I think that this awareness of what's going on in our country and is incumbent on everyone to take a part in it. And I think that for small business owners, because that's who I work with every day, it's really easy to get so carried away with how am I going to get to the next day, or how am I going to meet payroll or whatever. We forget that we have to take the time to take a deep breath and go, how can we be part of the solution? That's why I came up with this webinar. I don't know why other people are here or why they think it's important, but that's why I set it up.
That's real. Thank you. Andreina, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that if including equity in your business operations will only benefit you as a business owner. So unlike to what Jonathan was discussing about helping others, having equity, you're helping yourself as well. Yes, you are helping others, but you're helping your company, you're helping your community. So it's bigger than just me. And I think that's why this is very important, because yes, I may be helping someone that perhaps needs the help, but like you said, with talent, like just because they're, you know, I'm gonna go for the best talent regardless. I want to be fair to everyone, but that talent may be someone that's a minority, or someone, you know, that may be a female or whatever. And that's why I'm in it, because it's helping me help others, but it's also the value that comes out of it. It's not because I'm doing someone a favor. It's because they truly bring something to the table that I need.
It's not a favor. Cleonie, what do you think? Anything to add on that? Why do you even need these Kenyans?
Why do you need what?
Well, like you were working with the Kenyan folks.
Oh, Kenyan.
Well, why? Who cares? Just don't.
Honestly, it's just good business. It's just good business. I was, you know, if we're in a global society, unless you just want to stay small, and again, it goes back to how you define success, I just can't see another way than to have, you know, embed and integrate equity in your business. if you want nothing else than to make money, it is good business, you know? And I wish more people will see that, you know, they see it as an additional burden or another thing to do, but it's just good business. We're, with all the diversity and the differences, there's a lot of similarities, and for us to go and find our ideal client across cultures, across countries, it's just good business. So I know that's not very articulate, but really looking to make sure that we see this as not an add-on, as a special thing, something that's separate. It is one in the same. And right now, a lot of us, especially like with my nonprofit, right, looking at these predominantly white spaces, the tragedy is in predominantly white spaces, they feel like they're missing nothing at all. And that is the real tragedy.
Well, that dovetails nicely. So do people know the Chevrolet story? So Chevrolet, you know, titan of industry that it is and was, wanted to expand their market share, right? Of course, Chevys are all over, particularly in the dominant, I believe this would have been in like the 80s. They want to expand their market share. And so they wanted to expand to South America. And so they shipped one of their they did all the numbers on the incomes down there and what sold up here with incomes up here. And they launched one of their most successful United States cars, and they launched it down there. That would be the Chevy Nova. And the Chevy Nova sold terribly, and they struggled to understand why. Can anyone guess why the Chevy Nova sold so poorly in Latin America? Chevy Nova, Chevy Nova, Chevy Nova.
Doesn't go. Nova.
The Chevy doesn't go. The car was named It Doesn't Go. Right? Now, do you think, let's say those people, let's say those the corporate guys at Chevy don't give a damn about diversity, equity, inclusion. Certainly, I don't think of 80s corporate America as caring too much about it. But you know what? If anyone Latino or Latina had been working on this project, they would have realized that you've named this car the Chevrolet Doesn't Go, right? So that is an easy example of how diversity matters just on a pragmatic level. Now, one more example of this. I'm Jeff, I'm the DEI guy. It's not the only thing I do, but it's a large part of what I do. And I was working with the Mass Office on Disability, and we were doing a workshop with PowerPoint. And I'm working with them, and I care about diversity, and I can talk about this stuff all day, folks. That's probably pretty obvious. And then we're doing that, and I just knew that this workshop is good, and it's on racism, and I'm talking to this group. And as we go through, I start to become mortified because I realize how much of my workshop is based on being able to see. Because every slide and every example, and there's jokes and stuff in there, are based on being able to see. And there are 3 blind people in this class. Now they didn't storm out, but 2/3 of the way through, and it wasn't every slide, but 2/3 of the way through, I had to apologize out loud and say, hey, listen, I realize now that this wasn't very equitable and that I hadn't really considered, I hadn't done a good job of considering what it would be like to be in this workshop and you can't see. And so in the next workshop we did, because I continued to work with them, we did, and I had a bunch of audio examples. Like I had something, we don't have to get too much into it, but there's remember that dress that went viral? Because some people see it as white and gold, and some people see it as blue and black. And I'll sometimes use that to talk about microaggressions and how people see them different ways. But this time instead, I had this tone. And it's this tone that some people hear it as ascending, boop, and some people hear it as descending, boop. It's the same idea, but audio. And A, I felt great about it. B, the folks in the class recognized that I'd made that adjustment and that now that the dress wouldn't have worked for them. They've never seen the dress. Some of them had never seen any dress. They'd never seen anything, but this worked for them. And then lastly, it's just good business. Like Cleonie said, now I have something that works for everybody. Before I had this big, pardon the pun, blind spot. I had this big part where I'm missing a whole group of people and now I'm not. Chevy Nova, they're missing a whole group of people. They didn't know until it's too late, till they burned millions of dollars, right? So one of the main reasons why this is important is not just because we want to be nice and moral and we want people to think that we're good people, even though sure we do, but it's also because if you want to be successful, you have to, in your business, you have to give people what they want. And, you know, minorities are people too. And so by ignoring them, you ignore them at your own peril. And so that's something to think about. Because Deborah was good enough to put together a scenario, let's hear one of these, let's audition, see if we can get through one more scenario and see what we might do.
Which one you like?
How about the EforAll situation? We were all united by that.
All right, here's an EforAll situation. There are a limited number for all of our programs. Should preference be given to a minority applicant over a white applicant, since our mission says we're helping under-resourced individuals? And what if we know one person makes more money than the other, so it doesn't necessarily correlate to their color? Should the admission process be color and race blind?
In this case, when we say one person, we're saying, let's imagine that let's say there's a black guy and a white guy. The black guy makes more, but is black. Should we care about his race?
And their businesses are roughly equivalent, and, you know, on all the other criteria that we would judge them on.
How would you work? I don't, you know, not just an answer, but how would you work through this? Say race doesn't matter, black always, because black people are underrepresented in this country. What, money talks and the white guy's poorer. What do you say? Something else? I'm being reductive.
What do the panelists think? Andreina, Cleonie, should we be giving preference?
Sure. As I read the scenario, I did want to get some clarification. You said that the EforAll mission is around the individual, but if it's about the community, you don't want to tokenize, right, the one successful black person. And so when I read that, it happens so often where folks will see this one person of color who have succeeded and feel that, well, everyone else can, right? Because this is an example, and that's what came to mind for this particular scenario. If you're looking at the data and the data shows, whether it's within EforAll or nationwide, that this individual represents a group that is underrepresented, then it would be my advice that you go with the underrepresented group versus looking at this one individual, because that is not usually representation, a representation of what's really happening. And and I encourage folks to do that in their business as well. Look at the data and make informed decisions based on the data and not one specific scenario.
Right. So just to be clear, Cleonie, in this case, you'd say that the black guy making more money, he's like an outlier in that regard. So like black people are black people are so often underrepresented that you wouldn't include that as a factor. You wouldn't say, okay, well, he makes
correct.
More money, so. What do other people think? This is not, by the way, this is included not because we have the perfect answer, but because this is the kind of thing that you're going to grapple with and continue to grapple with. So you have to have a process. So what do you think?
I do have a question for EforAll, obviously. So far, you have been doing for years. And what is the percentage of any of those cohort, what is the success rate of someone continuing that, regardless of race or something? Means,
our latest numbers show that about 70% of the people who've gone through our program continue their business 3 years afterwards.
Okay, 70%. That's a pretty good number because, yeah, absolutely. Means that shows that the program is working. As far as supporting the minority means bringing those tools to improve and like make that equitable. kind of thing. I appreciate it.
That's true. Do you think we have enough information to answer this question? Avinash had a question that clarified it somewhat. Do we have? Is there anything else you'd want to know to make this decision?
Sometimes I do feel like I think a broader spectrum might help also the minorities, because the all-inclusive kind of part, the equitable part, can be actually passed on through this program to diverse kind of audience. Yes.
Okay. Well, so we didn't. Well, let's see. Does EforAll have diversity as a value? Is that an open value? Like, is that in other words, if I'm in a meeting at EforAll and I argue, well, we do want to be diverse, don't we? Has EforAll decided that question or no? Don't know.
Jeremiah, are you still on here?
Yeah, I would say we do have a value that's proactively seek inclusivity and diversity.
Got it. Right.
Yeah.
And so then I guess what you'd have to know, remember how one person can't be diverse, right? One human being, it's not possible for one person to say, well, Jonathan is diverse. Jonathan cannot be diverse. A group can be diverse. A person cannot be diverse. So the question I might have, well, what does this cohort look like? If we're picking up 40 people, right? Will this be more diverse if we pick guy X or guy Y? Do you get what I mean? That would be a factor, rather than saying that anyone's individual thing, because Andreina brought up something earlier. At her old way of thinking was, the more Latina single moms we have, the more diverse we are. And then she got down that road and realized, oh, that's not true at all. We're actually not diverse, even though these women all have merit, but this is not a diverse group. This group is a monoculture. We have one perspective, we're one type, and we're excluding others. So it would be possible if you just said, choose black or brown no matter what. It would be possible to become a monoculture. I don't know that EforAll is so far down that road, but I'm saying it's possible in the world. So the question would be, that I would have, is what does this group look like, right? If we pick the white guy, will it be all white? If we pick the black guy, will it be all black? Because we don't want that. We have diversity, and Joanna let us know, we have diversity and inclusion as a value. So if in your own business, to bring it back to the point of this whole thing, if in your own business, you have diversity and inclusion as a value, then I don't think you can consider any individual hiring decision in a vacuum. Neither the meritocratic vacuum, nor the diversity equals whoever is the most diverse. Man, I can't give bigger bunny ears than that. Does that make sense? I usually refer to this in Jeremiah, I guess Jeremiah dropped, but Jeremiah knows I refer to this as an equity lens. You have to always have an equity lens. What would be equitable, right? In that, so that everyone's represented in this case. It would be possible to have an organization where every single, in the NBA, for example, let's just say, which is, attempts to be as meritocratic as can be, but in the NBA, as the players go, it doesn't increase diversity to say, well, we need diversity, so we need another black guy. The NBA is the rare place that's mostly black men. But then you switch right over to the coaches and suddenly that is true again. Right? All right. Does anyone have any, we're coming up on time and I like to respect people's time. Does anyone have any closing thoughts or things they want to share? Joanna? Oh, you're muted. Oh, no, you're not.
Oh, am I on now? Okay, perfect. Thanks. Thanks, Jeffy. I think just to follow up on some of the points that people brought up about the importance of diversity inclusion, as there is a very solid business case, as we might want to say, in a business community for that, and that it can really grow. And like if it works for Deborah and Jeff, there was a report that just came out from McKinsey and Company just at the end of April that was specifically about this and showing that like a lot of times, and maybe this is one of the tropes that you've talked about, Jeff, but in particularly, I think, American culture, in an economic perspective, it very often is like, oh, if you want to include more people, or you want to have diversity, or it's because you want to be nice, or it's a moral argument only. And actually that more and more research has been done on the value of having a diverse environment, it shows how much it really can improve the economic status of everyone. And I think that that's a point that was made by a lot of people, that even if you're in an environment that seems to be working well, like what are you losing out on by not having other perspectives in the room with you, right, to make decisions? And so I'm happy to share, there's both a report, and then there's also there's an economics podcast that I listen to a bit obsessively that also discusses the report. So I'll share both of those in the comments, but I thought it was a good supplement to a lot of the points that everybody made.
Joanna, you listen to an economics podcast obsessively, huh?
I know, it's a bit silly.
I know.
But it's because I feel like there's so many of these narratives that we get all the time that don't make sense. And so the more data we have to kind of prove the opposite, and the more dialogue we can have about that it's not true, and things can be very different and actually be much better. Like how can we continue painting that picture, right? So,
and I just want to send a shout out to Joanna, because she's the entrepreneur experience manager here at EforAll, and is spending a lot of time making sure that all our materials are what they should be, including being completely equitable with our A Para Todos program, which at the beginning was just translated clumsily from the English and will not be that anymore. And I think that's a demonstration of how EforAll is trying to be more equitable as an organization.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think the last question of like, why does it matter? I think there's still some digging to do there, you know, because it obviously a lot with this past year, 2020, a lot has been brought up, and you know, corporations have not been shy in, you know, in jumping on that bandwagon, for better or for worse, and being able to, you know, make things at least seem more inclusive. But I think, you know, Deborah, to what the goal is, you know, even for this, for small business owners to be thinking about this, I think it's still a hard question for them to ask themselves, or to really dig into, does this really matter to me? Because the reality is you can do business without thinking about these things. And, you know, many corporations that we know of, and tech companies and all of that, have been very successful and have lacked, you know, diversity and inclusion. And so I don't know. I think I mean, I'm definitely for it, but I know that there's, going back to the beginning of the conversation, even kind of, Jeff, your introduction of, it's uncomfortable. It takes a lot of time and effort. And I think when a small business owner has limited capacity, those decisions, like to hire someone that's different from you, can make things more difficult. So I don't know. I know it's not an easy answer, but I'm glad that we're having the conversation, but know that, yeah, I'm still wondering if people are asking themselves this question.
Well, you're being radically candid, right? You're saying this might help you in the long run, and you definitely think it's the more moral thing to do. You're not promising that it's easy, and that the minute, you know, it's like losing, and all the things you tell yourself you're going to do, lose weight, go to bed on time. Yeah, easy to say. And then that Netflix says, are you still watching? And you click yes. Just one more.
Do the panelists want to say anything in summary before we close us up?
I just want to say thank you for having me. I think that these conversations are needed, and sometimes they may be uncomfortable, but we need to get out of our comfort zone in order to drive change. And it's a learning process. I'm in a certain stage in my business right now. Next year, I hope to be in another stage. So learning never ends. And the fact that we're all here just processing and learning and discussing our experiences shows that collectively we can make a difference. And I love EforAll and everyone in it, and EForever and everyone in it. So I'm just really happy and proud to be part of this EforAll family. And I'm really appreciative for the opportunity to be here as your panelist today. Thank you.
Is that the alumni group, EForever?
EForever is the post you've already launched, and it's an ongoing mastermind group. And we have 2 of their folks here too. So thank you for joining us today.
Oh, brilliant name. All right.
Cleonie, did you want to say anything?
Just wanted to say thanks for having me. As you continue to grapple with this, it's really important to, kind of find a community to continue this discussion. It can be really hard work. The more you learn, the more it takes from you, and really look to find your community to continue the conversation, so that this conversation is normalized. As you can hear the theme in the work that the way I want to approach this, that it is not an add-on, that it is not a special project. It should be really integrated, and the way to do it and do it sustainably is to find your community.
There you go. It's not the frosting you put on at the end. It's the egg that's baked into the cake, right in the middle. You can't take it. If you do it right, you can't take it out. And you also can't just add it last.
All right, we're going to bake it in. Jeff, thank you. Cleonie, Andreina, our audience, thank you. This was recorded. I will send you all the recording as well as the links to the things Joanna just put up. Thank you all for hanging in there, staying with us, and being part of forward progress on these important things. Thanks.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye-bye.